Good afternoon, everyone. I hope if anyone here is from the Northeast where I am, you're all bundled up and taking care of yourself in this frigid temperature. I want to welcome you to the NAF's webinar today. Keep them in their cars, how modern borrow engagement is changing the subprime auto collections. This webinar is in collaboration with NAF and KredosAi. Today's speakers are Scott Nadza, Chief Revenue Officer at Kredos. And at KredosAi, Scott defines and executes the company's revenue growth strategy, uniting sales, marketing, and customer success to accelerate growth and deliver market leadership in digital first payment solutions. We also have Marguerite Watanabe, President of Connections Insights. Marguerite has worked in the auto and automotive finance industry for almost 40 years now, allowing her to truly understand its strengths, weaknesses, and most importantly, the opportunities. Scott and Marguerite do prefer that if you have a question, please put it in the chat in Zoom, and we will get to those at the end of the webinar. And one last thing before we get started, just so everybody knows, this webinar is being recorded and we will send it out to all of the registrations within the next 24 to 48 business hours. So with that, let me welcome Scott and Marguerite. It's all yours.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not only proud of those almost 40 years, I'm also proud to be an NAF board member for probably about half of those years, or maybe even more than that. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And I actually want to start off by saying it's been a real joy working with Scott on this, not only because of his energy around the topic, and who gets really excited about something like this. It's really about customer communications. He does. And so, Scott, it's been great to work with you on this. But we're going to be telling you some of the thoughts around what we've been seeing with the whole journey of the customer communications. We know that again, you heard from Diane, I have both the auto and the automotive finance side. And on the auto side, a lot of times they think of the communication starting with them, with the purchase of the car. But if you think about it, the finance guys have that car for a lot longer in terms of, maybe 5 years, 6 years, unfortunately, 7, 8, 9 years, they might have a loan with you. And so having those communications to have them be profitable, have them be positive is really important. So with that, Scott, how about if you could tell us a little bit about what you've been through as well with this presentation? It's kind of fun to put it all together.
No, this has been fantastic, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you all, and thanks for having me. And nice to meet you all in the audience. My name is Scott Nadza. Probably don't know me. I've spent over 20 years building software solutions focused on improving engagement and outcomes for customers. Currently at KredosAi, we're building intelligent messaging solutions that improve the borrower's journey, right? And we're also working in other industries. So I'm excited to discuss what's possible when you deploy intelligent messaging. And again, I come to this space with a very fresh perspective. And so after a long stint focusing on content creation, engagement, and sharing in another space, we're setting our sights on helping businesses like yours deliver intelligent messaging through digital channels that work.
Wonderful. So today we're going to be talking about the intelligent sort of borrowing engagement and how that's working in the non-prime side of the business, and going from a reactive type of responses to a proactive relationship building one. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that journey for the customer. We're going to talk about building that relationship as a first phase, followed by growing that relationship and how you can bring value and really positive and personalized communication to that. And then in some cases, you still have to save that relationship. And what are some of the challenges that arise from that, and how you can adapt to those challenges and really turn that into an opportunity, and then use some of the newer technology that we're talking about here, newer approaches to the communication style, and so that you can, again, build out that loyalty, build out that positive experience with the customer. So with that, let's talk now about let's just start off with kind of what the problem is. So in the non-prime lending space, we hear a lot about delinquencies and repossessions. So Scott, tell us a little bit more about what that all means for the for the
Yeah,
industry?
it's one of these things where you hate to start off with a negative, but I think we can all agree that there's moments when the auto lending industry and the auto industry can face some significant challenges. So whether it's high default rates in the subprime market, constant struggles with unexpected vehicle breakdowns and costly repairs that strain already tight budgets. We've all been there in some form, right? Family, friends, cousins, brothers, we've all been there, right? And these realities are compounded by sometimes negative perceptions of aggressive collections if you're in that phase of the journey and practices. Definitely in impersonal lender-borrower relationships. There's really not a personal connection there a lot of times, right? And this can leave borrowers, feeling alone or on an island. I know sometimes I do. I don't really know sometimes what's going on, where some of my money is and where I'm getting some of my money. So I think, people feel a little bit alone, and there's a way to improve that. And I think here's the biggest issue, and I think we can all relate to this. Beyond all these other issues, lenders face the fundamental challenge of reaching borrowers. So, how do you get somebody to look up? How do you get somebody to pick up a phone call? Right? How do you connect with the borrower on the right device at the right time in the right way so that we're actually capturing their attention? And we all know that it's an oversaturated market. All this inputs and outputs of my phone. So it's really, really hard to get somebody to look up, and it's really, really hard for any third-party vendor, lender, or company to establish a trusted relationship that is necessary for really meaningful engagement, rather than just being another vendor, another message in my iMessage or in my inbox, right?
Well, I have to tell you, it drives me crazy about my own behavior now. Even I'm not a delinquent customer, but I don't trust anything on the phone. I see something and I automatically think it's scam, right? I'll start with that and then I'll make them work their way to getting me to trust them. That's part of what you're dealing with today.
Absolutely.
And another thing I hear often too is, the customers have changed. There's not so much that sense of responsibility or accountability. If I'm late, I'm late. If I'm delayed, I'm delayed. Do you see some of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Especially,
mean,
Scott, across your industries. You deal with a lot of industries, so it'd be interesting to hear about that too. Sorry to cut you off.
oh no, no, no problem. Yeah, no, I think you start to see there's a new generation of folks making payments in different industries. Those folks, have different definitions of accountability and responsibility. Also, we're in an economy that is difficult, and there are multiple subscriptions that a lot of these folks are dealing with. And I think one of the biggest challenges is these individual borrowers and people that are paying subscriptions are always kind of prioritizing their tech stack, right? Well, this bill's the most important, but this bill is also important, right? And the reality is pretty much everything that we subscribe to is relatively important. So I think we're starting to see a lot of new challenges. But I do think, if you look at a lot of I don't want to just say the younger folks, but I think the one thing is there's so many digital touch points in a typical customer journey in their world. So getting them to look up and pay attention to their financial wellness is really important. And I'm not sure that all borrowers actually are in a state of financial wellness, and they truly understand how to manage their finances and make sure that they're staying on track in all their payments. So yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through here.
Yes. All right. Let's go through it then. Let's talk about sort of that first step and where lenders should be starting to focus, or if they are, how they can continue to build on that. So let's talk about phase one here.
Yep. Yeah, so honestly, the first 90 days sets the tone for any relationship, and in this case, the relationship. So this is when the borrowers are most engaged and receptive, right? Really excited. I have my new vehicle, and it also though is another thing where confusion can start to come into play, right? And there could be some early mistakes, right? Where you might miss a payment window. You might start immediately playing catch up for the life of the loan. And as you get into some of these touch points, it can be very challenging. So I think when you get into this, you start to see what we're going to do in this discussion, Marguerite and I, is we're going to start to break down kind of the way it was or is in some organizations and the way it should be and can be right now. So I think in this first phase, you start to look at, and we've all gotten this, that generic welcome letter. You're all excited. Eventually, maybe a week later, you get a letter from your lender. And then, maybe you have to go in and take a URL, type it into your computer or your iPad or iPhone and go figure out how to access the account. We've all had issues with that. We've all had successes. That's not always as easy as it can be. And then after that, I mean, how many follow-ups do you really get as a borrower from your lender in the first couple weeks? Really, the only thing they're asking for, they want to really make sure your payment's coming in, which is not, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is zero relationship building. And that's one of the challenges is there's just no relationship. It has now become a financial transactional relationship. That's part of it, but there's benefits to building that relationship, right? So I know Marguerite, we're gonna talk a lot about, what does intelligent engagement look like, and it's really these personalized welcome messages via text or email. You've all got them, and you know what they feel like. It could be a "Hi Sarah, congrats on your new car. Here's how you access your account." We also are going to share you an interactive tutorial showing the payment schedule and some of your features, right? We also might do a first payment celebration. Great job, you're on your way. There's always good, little signals, for our brain, the way we think of, getting some positive reinforcement. And then what about progress updates? How many times have I thought in my mind, I wonder how many more payments I have without looking, wouldn't it be good just for my lender once in a while to say, hey, did a great job, Scott, you're 25% through the loan, right? So I think those are some of the things that we should be doing, and we should be, and I know I expect, I want personalized messages because I get a personalized experience in Uber. I get a personalized experience in Amazon. I get a personalized experience in Netflix, right? So why not do it in this space as well?
Scott, I was kind of smiling to myself, but we had the storms last week, right? I also have a new personalized relationship with a number of new retail stores because I bought a purse. Let me see, it was snowing, right, and raining.
Yeah.
So I had to go shopping. I realized as you're talking about this welcome here has to cut through all that clutter, whether it's like you said, the Netflix, my service provider for this, all these things that come in now that are fighting for my attention.
Right.
And then all the retail stores. It is amazing how to cut through all that clutter, I would say.
Right.
It's
Yeah, I was going to say, and really why this matters. I mean, we want to set a positive tone from day one in any relationship, right? Because we want this to be a long-term relationship. We absolutely want to reduce confusion that can lead to missed payments and problems in the future. We want to absolutely build trust because we're dealing with financial relationship and things that are important in people's lives. And I think what we've seen, and we'll talk about a little bit more with some of our results in our business, is we know that early engagement will reduce delinquency rates, right? So it's again building that relationship. So yeah, that's part of that welcome experience, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that.
And we all want to get that first payment. We don't want the first payment defaults, that's for sure. So beyond just trying to avoid the delinquency side, right, for someone to default on their loan, we also want to help customers in building out their credit. That is something that's always been a big part of what NAF has done. What our industry as a whole is to not only provide credit to the customers who may be somewhat challenged in there, but also to help them build out their future and their financial wellness going forward. So tell us, it's interesting that you have this slide in here, but tell me how that can work with customer communications.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, all the different types of customers and folks that are buying cars these days, right? And I think, I am, personally, I have two daughters who are going to be buying their own cars in the very near future. And, sometimes I wonder if they are totally literate financially, right? They've had role models telling them things, right? They've been able to elect to take some courses in high school to learn about, financial wellness and financial literacy, but not everybody has, right? And it doesn't mean that it's not age determined. So what we want to make sure we do is potentially, I would argue, provide ongoing education support, because the traditional approach is right now you may get some ongoing education or support if you go find it, right? Of course, there's the YouTubes of the world, and you can go hunt and peck on your own and go off into the jungle and come back with some information that may or may not be relevant to your current lender. And a lot of times these borrowers are really struggling alone if they do not have a support system around them to help them with this, with budgeting, credit improvement. So I think there's a real opportunity for lenders, especially banks, if your North Star is about customer experience and engaging with your customers, Why not send financial tips? Tax refund season is coming. Here are some smart options for you. Doesn't matter your stage or age, but learning can help a lot of folks in their financial wellness journey. Also, some folks do need credit building education. Some folks are looking to buy a home at some point, right? Some folks need to have that credit score climb. So, some of those, again, nudges and reminders of like, hey, your on-time payments are improving your score, right? That's showing them and reinforcing positive behaviors. And of course, when you get into other things, insurance and maintenance reminders, really big. Possibly qualifying for better rates, right? Hopefully saving money. Again, that's a way to build trust. If you can save me some money as a vendor, and instead of just taking what I was already paying. And of course, also being able to adapt to hardships and things like that and audible, let's say, at the line of scrimmage. So I think what you've seen, that what we want to do is we want to equip folks with knowledge to be better equipped to stay current, right? We want lenders to be positioned as partners, not have an adversary relationship. And in the end, this is going to transition to sort of customer lifetime value, possible upsell and cross-sell opportunities as well. So this does matter. And I think, if you think about yourselves, all of us at one point took out our first loan, how much did you know about, a long-term loan, whether it's 5 years or even a mortgage, right? There's a lot that we don't know and you learn over time. And I think there's ways that lenders can educate their borrowers at using intelligent messaging.
Right. And like you said a number of times, it helps build that trust out. And that's so important. And I think there is some positive here with the younger generation in that they grew up knowing what their credit score was. Us baby boomers were that was a black box that you never got to touch. Right. Now I think more of them are understanding that, okay, in order to build that credit or credibility and getting money to buy a house, a car, or whatever it may be, it's important to have, a good credit background as well. So that's great that we can start to really build upon that. And financial literacy is something I've been involved in for a number of years. And I feel like we're not fighting up against a wall as much as we had been in the past, that there's a lot more of the consumer embracing it. We used to say that the non-prime customer would kind of walk into the dealership hoping that they could just get this over with, right? I think they go in now much more educated, and the lender continuing with that education is even more important. So, all right. So now we've kind of built the trust. Okay. We got through the first 90 days. We have some of these things going. How do you keep doing that for the length of that loan then?
Yeah, I mean, I think. Oh, wait, say that again. I'm sorry, I just missed that. That broke up.
No, sorry. How do you continue building upon that relationship with the borrowers?
Yeah. So I think this is where lenders can miss a huge opportunity. As Diane mentioned, my title is a chief revenue officer, so I'm definitely interested in revenue and awareness generation, and wherever I'm at. And I know the one great thing with lenders have is an engaged customer base, right? They're making payments, they're accessing their account. It's a perfect time for intelligent cross-selling and support in terms of new ways to generate business relationships with borrowers. So again, you have to do it at the right time and the offer has to be right, but I think there's a way to deliver more ongoing value at this point.
Yeah. So tell me about that.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I think, and I always say this, and I think we can all relate to this. If you can think about these linear approaches of yesteryear, the Sears catalog approach, or the peanut butter spread, where everybody gets the same offer, right? Everybody gets the same gap insurance offer. There's no timing intelligence. It can feel a little spammy, and in many cases, when you get into conversion rates, they're low, and there might not be that much ROI there. So what you really want to do is what it could look like is in an intelligent engagement world is gap insurance can be offered when equity drops below certain thresholds. You can offer extended warranties when the vehicle hits a certain mileage, right? Because of the Internet of Things. There's refinance opportunities to bring into the conversation. What about second vehicle financing with proven performers with life changes? We all go through that, right? There's payment protection. So I think here you start to think about, if you start to build a trusted relationship, if you start to have the ability to get some of these folks to read your messages, consume your messages, and the right channel at the right time, you can increase your conversion rates, which is important for any business. And it does not matter. You want to increase your conversion rates because conversion does, transmit into revenue and profit, right? So, what we want to do though is truly still be helping borrowers protect their investment. But in the end, for our banks and dealerships, obviously trying to generate more revenue per customer, and both win though, because it's a strengthened relationship and could potentially lead to, customer lifetime value and increased customer lifetime value as well.
Right. And getting the, oops, might have some folks on here. All right. So the other thing is going kind of even beyond some of those opportunities. Are there, we can kind of see the relationship with the customer even strengthening because of just the nature of having that loan with the customer for so long. So tell me about some of those, and I'll maybe throw out a few of my own, just kind of thinking, are there more even?
Yeah, so I think when you look at some different ways to, inform customers, make sure that they're taking advantage of every opportunity that they can. And I would say, we start thinking about like intelligent upselling, right? You can start talking about, these over-the-air real-time vehicle intelligence upsells, right? Something like, hey, we noticed you didn't get remote start. You want to add it for $30 a month? Also, some things we've all dealt with digital fencing and beacons. So when you get closer to dealerships or a Verizon store or a Rogers store, wherever you are in the world, you can actually have sensors and beacons that can trigger a notification possibly, right? So wouldn't that be great if they get closer to your location, that some sort of notification where it could get them to stop into a location or you can communicate some sort of offer. So lots of options. I would think that one everybody can relate to is dealing with services, maintenance, and repairs. One of the most common things we all deal with in cars as they continue to on their journey. So I think one way we think about this is finding ways to upsell, cross sell to help keep your car running, keep making payments, but also expand share of wallet. That's just part of the game. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of data driven opportunities where you can be empathetic but still be opportunistic, right? And again, it all comes down to something I'll say a few times here. It's the right offer at the right time for the right reason to the right person.
Right. Because if you miss that, it gets a little bit tough. Then it becomes a burden more than anything else. It's interesting. This is a topic that's really crossing the entire industry because there's data and there's data monetization. And how much do you want to do that as well, right? Do you want to say $30? That was what I was thinking. That's a lot of money if I started, but maybe $10. Maybe what is it? I don't know. These are all new areas that we're talking about, right? Vehicles and repairs and insurance are here on top of us, but typically it hasn't been something the industry from the non-prime or prime even financing group has gotten into, but opportunities there. I can also see if we went even further, there's a lot of truck, drivers out there who are taking all those Amazon packages around for us. I mean, we could sit in a room and brainstorm for a while, all the opportunities. So it's kind of exciting. So it's more than just the near term.
Absolutely.
All right. So, but still things happen, right? We, again, have homes that, probably got trees on them this last week, or we had, someone gets sick or someone has something come up in life that wasn't expected and bills start to get, it's more and more difficult to pay those bills. So how can we catch those and how can you be top of mind when it comes to the funnel of who's getting paid? How can we get that? And how can you help them with that?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Marguerite. And I think this gets into those early warning signs and systems and also, being proactive. So, sometimes I would say in the olden days or the traditional approach that like we have no idea that the borrower's struggling, right? We're just waiting until the payment is missed. Now we know there's a problem. But in the end, is that a reactive action? Absolutely, right? And I think it's more expensive that way. So I think in the end, if you start to get into what it could be or what it should be, is if you think about intelligent engagement, there's different signals that we can all detect, right? If you're thinking big data, Internet of Things, there are signals, there's variables, there's data that we can use, and we can start to figure out if has the payment date changed multiple times throughout their journey with this lender, right? So you start to kind of run some numbers on that and start to figure out the best date to send a message for the payment, right? There could be increased customer service calls. That's one of those signals in any business where the squeaky wheel, should get the oil, but not always, right? So when you start to see that increased problems or service calls or support tickets, that can create issues. And also sometimes things like login patterns or just engagement can be a problem. So, I think you start to look at how do we be more proactive when we see something early, and it's something like, hey, we noticed you tried to change your payment date. Do you need help? Right. So it's really listening and thinking about that customer, not just thinking about the payment. Right. So whether it's 24/7 self-service options, payment extensions, skip a payment, hardship programs. I mean, I think you think about all this AI and agentic stuff, you can start to do some of these messages and notifications either manually or through agents, right? And I think, being proactive is the key here. And why does this matter? I mean, you want to catch problems, at a $500 problem, not a $5,000 problem, right? You want to make sure you're, again, supporting your borrower so they're not judged and defensive. And we obviously want to those payments, right? And avoid delinquencies down the road.
And going back to the title, keep them in their cars, right?
100%.
Or SUV or CUV, but it's not a car. All right. So, but at times, unfortunately, we do get to that point where customers miss their payments, right? So walk us through kind of what you're talking about with the intelligent engagement at that point. It's very different because now they have gone across the line. Now they're delayed. They have a delinquent payment.
Yeah, and this is where you kind of get into some traditional strategies that may still work or may have worked really well at one time, but I think we believe that they're going to start failing the most because one size fits all scripts don't work that well anymore. Again, does one size fits all Amazon work for everybody or Netflix? Absolutely not. So why would it work for you when in any lending relationships or a financial relationship? So I think this is where we can see the biggest impact because people care about money, they care about their cars, and I do think that in comparison, early intervention can cost pennies versus dollars later in the relationship. So yeah, let's start looking at some of these stages. And I think, again, I'll say something. This first miss, as you start to work with customers like we do, different customers might change these dates. So it could be day 1 to 10, it could be day 1 to 15. But ultimately, when you start to think about the traditional approach for a first miss, which is usually obviously within the first 15 days, you get that generic message. Hey, you're late. It's automated. It's not branded. It's usually not personal. There's not a lot of context except please send your payment. And a lot of people take that as an adversarial tone, right? So I think what you start to think about is if we, take this intelligent engagement approach that, we believe in, personalized based history, and people have said this stuff like this to me. Hey, this isn't like you. Is everything okay? That could be a nice text message, right? We can work with you. Here are the options. So you start to get into some sort of negotiation strategies of breaking up payments into thirds, right? And hey, we know you're going through changes. Let's talk, right? It sounds a lot more like a friend or a family member rather than a debt collector, right? So I think, some of those solutions that we see working really well in our experience is partial payments via text, could be extensions. You could obviously do schedule a call if you have that infrastructure set up in your business. But again, I think in the case here is we want to make sure that as soon as we figure out there's a problem and there's a miss, we need to get the right channel going. Usually it's texting for engaged borrowers and get them engaged and get them talking to us in any form. But usually it's through messaging because your phone is not too far away from you at any point of the day.
Yet, unfortunately, it's often too close to me even when I'm sleeping. So, but we want just to make sure we get through all the slides. I want to make sure. Tell us about the next couple of days quickly, and then we can continue.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as you go deeper in delinquency, and this is where there's more risk, right? So, traditional approach, more calls, rigid scripts, a little bit of, it's not loan sharking, but it's a little bit more, difficult conversation, a little bit more adversarial, right? But I think when you get into this intelligent engagement, strategy adjustment, personalized payment plans based on payment capacity, considering historical performance, extension requests. And again, we're trying to get higher cure rates, remove the whole repossession piece of this, right? We do not want to get there. And again, better outcomes for both the lender and the borrower. And like Marguerite said, keeping them in their cars.
Keeping them in their cars. Tell me a story where that happened then.
You can think of, you can think of a lot of different ways. And I think, if you think of the traditional approach in the olden days on the left here, there's a Maria misses her payment. She gets 15 calls over the next few weeks. I don't pick up the phone too often. I'm sure Maria didn't pick up the phones because she missed those calls, right? So, and she doesn't answer the calls. No one's answering the phone. No idea about options available to her, but we can't even get Maria on the phone, right? And in the end, a repo truck shows up day 75. Total loss for everyone. Maria loses the car. Lender loses money. And in the end, what we try to do is detect, obviously the miss very, very early. Maria actually changed her payment date twice last month. And in the end, after day 3, you could say, hey, hi, Maria, we noticed your payment is late. Everything okay with your job? She can respond, hey, this is just a tight month. We can then send a payment plan enrollment link, and she enrolls via the phone in less than 2 minutes, makes smaller payments, catches up, still in her car, still a customer, and refers her sister for a loan next year, right? So it's not just, retaining Maria's business, and it's not just customer lifetime value, but it's also referrals from Maria, because now she has a friend that, or trusted relationship in in a lender, and that's a positive thing, and that matters, right? So better outcomes and less money spent, and in this case, Maria's still in the car.
Right, right, exactly, and that's most important. So tell us, go ahead, tell us about
And,
this.
and so the one thing that you'll see here is, I think many people probably now hearing about these text messages say, I get a bunch of boring text messages. And that's right, you do, right? And one of the things I want you to know is, we support what's called rich communication services. So hopefully this is something you've experienced or you've thought about, but if you haven't, this is somewhere where you really need to look up. And I would argue that you should take a look at this and absorb this. So I believe RCS is completely changing the game for credibility and trust for vendors, lenders, businesses, right? We've all gotten a pretty lame text message. So if you are seeing this on the screen, you can start to see instant brand recognition on the left. That's our Kredos badge. So you're seeing a blue logo. This could be your logo. It does not need to be our logo. You get your colors and your information as a trusted sender in your contacts on your phone, right? They know immediately it's really you. So if we pivot to the middle column in the middle phone, you can start to see the different types of messages that we all get, right? It's more of an app-like experience. And you can see the Kredos logo, the Kredos brand name in the top message. But as you go down below that, you start to see the typical messages that we see from people or businesses. Again, the branded RCS is the top with the blue icon, but there's that 5 or 6 digit, we call it a short code, that sits in the middle. Decreases credibility. Who the heck is 71056? Who's 90210? We don't know. Right? That doesn't help me with anything. And then if you go to the bottom, you're getting the random 10-digit numbers that we all dodge. We are all professional text dodgers and phone dodgers now with these these random 10-digit numbers, which is most of what lenders use today, to be honest with you. So it's the least credible to consumers, and it looks like spam. So when you're trying to build a relationship from day one, you can't afford to look like a scammer or a spammer, right? So all RCS solves that problem. You can see on the column on the right, on the phone on the right, there's actually a map, a carousel with call to action buttons. So if anybody here is tuned into analytics, the other cool thing about these RCS messages, if somebody clicks on that map, clicks on an image, clicks on a pay now button, you're actually able to capture those analytics and analyze them, which is great. So that's a little bit different. You don't get that rich, deep detail of analytics inside of traditional text messaging. So if you start to leverage RCS with a company like Kredos or others, you can start to really understand what's working and what's not working quicker using RCS. So I think you can kind of see just what RCS feels like, and you can kind of close your eyes and imagine putting your logo where the Kredos logo is. And if your borrowers were seeing that, they're seeing a credible, trusted relationship that they're familiar with, not a random short code or a 10-digit number.
I love this slide. When he first showed this to me, I felt like I understood. That's what I'm getting on my phone all the time. And that's what I ignore all the time. So it was really fascinating for me to learn that. Well, let's go to some numbers here, because we have people on the phone who probably are talking about this at their executive tables, or people who are talking to their shareholders about, we need to get down this route. How can I prove it? How can I say this is actually what the value is in this?
Yeah, definitely. And we've provided some real industry research from verified sources here, and I think we're going to provide some of our own Kredos research as well. But I think what we've seen is, lenders and businesses that embrace, intelligent messaging and really commit to borrower engagement are experiencing measurable results. So 70% less calls, chat, and email increase after implementing intelligent engagement tools. Why is that? Well, the borrowers are satisfied, right? They're informed, they're educated. We're not doing this. There's a fire drills every day with calls, chats, and email problems, right? It can reduce your operational costs and calories that you're spending because you're actually getting less problems in your inbox, on the phone. So that's a real positive, right? And then if you look at what AI and automation can do. Who does not want to be more efficient, right? We all can obviously be more efficient. We all can work smarter and make an essential impact. So I think you'll start to see that there is a 30% increase in efficiency when you start to leverage systems that can automate some of this engagement. Obviously, you're still leveraging your human intelligence, but you need to set this up and let the software take care of business, right? And then here's the other one is folks, we're always trying to generate more awareness and revenue and grow as businesses. You have the ability to increase up to 40% more revenue if you excel at personalization compared to competitors, right? You're able to reach people, you're able to increase, offers and conversions to your audience. So again, better outcomes across really important metrics that matter. And just to continue this, just as we're going to land the plane here very quickly, we also know that lenders can see higher 50% higher conversion rates on cross-sell offers when personalized and well timed, right? And what you'll also see, which is incredibly important, whether it's NPS score, customer satisfaction scores, you're getting a 23% increase, right? Because you're reaching them at the right time, on the right device through the right channel, right? So those lenders' scores are increasing in customer satisfaction. And if you ask me, one of the most important personalized experiences can increase customer lifetime value. Up to 20%, right? So I've been a seller my whole life. Selling to a new person is hard. Selling to a current customer is a lot easier, right? So we want them to borrow for their next car. We want their kids to borrow for the next car. We want them to for friends, family, and others in their network to borrow, right? So whatever the next financial move is. So we're seeing a lot of really strong results from lenders. But I know we're getting close here. I want to also share some results from large enterprises. One of the things that we're really grateful for, and we've had the opportunity, is work with tier one telcos. And those are some of our most successful customers seeing results just because we've worked with them for some time now. And we've had incredible success in a very competitive industry here in North America, right? There's the big three telecommunications providers. We're working with multiple of them. And these relationships, we've seen a 20% increase in return on investment by driving more payments sooner with KredosAi. And again, that's a telco subscription in this case, right? So we're getting more payments faster. All day with our telco customers. Our largest telco customer has also experienced an 8% decrease in disconnection rates, right? The worst thing that can happen in a very competitive, mature environment and then when there's three big players, is you leave and you churn, you leave your current provider and you go to one of the other providers, the other two, right? That's really painful for a business. And the most important, we're pulling late payments, 3 to 5 days faster, right? So we're getting money to these organizations faster, which can then be distributed and invested back into the business. And ultimately, I'll say in my simple language, we can move the needles and with our customers, and that really, really matters. And we're really looking forward to doing that with more customers as we move forward.
All right, Scott, you got 2 minutes. Can you do 2 slides? Getting started, and tell us, what can someone do about this? This is exciting. I got very excited when I heard it all, and I'm getting excited again.
Yeah, definitely. So I can make up some time in there, just like your pilots can. So first of all, we all have to really audit our credit journey, right? Our current journey, right? Where are you being reactive? That's the first thing I would say is, where are you just waiting for problems to show up? Try to get ahead of those, in the future, right? Are your borrowers feeling lost or confused? I'd map out your customer journey and start to identify quick wins around where you're being really, really reactive and where you can maybe be a little bit more proactive. So I would start with maybe experimenting with new welcome messaging. Is there ways to start doing some sort of payment celebration so you start to interact not just in terms of, hey, we need your money, but coaching, being like that player coach and celebrating wins with your borrowers, right? So I think those quick wins would be the second step. And the third step, ultimately, I believe, many of these tools and technologies are going to help enterprises move forward. So I would argue that you would evaluate systems like KredosAi and some of our competitors, right? And see what works within your existing systems, get some sort of test deployment going in weeks and not months. Start doing some experimentation with messaging and testing and see if you can generate the ROI just like the rest of our customers. And I'm not saying just test KredosAi. We're really confident in where we stand. There's some folks out there that do this, but I think the first thing is know where you are to kind of figure out where you're going, right? So audit that current journey, get some quick wins, and start evaluating some systems as soon as possible, right? It's really important to start doing that as soon as possible. And last one, don't boil the ocean. Pick off one little part where you're being reactive. You're likely not going to be able to boil the ocean as quickly as you want to. So I would say that would be my last bit of advice.
And how do you go about picking? I mean, there are so many out there and it's a little confusing these days. So how do you actually find the right one, or what are the criteria that you might use?
Yeah, I mean this is a hard one because it kind of depends for the different businesses that we work with. But I would argue that one of the best things that you should do, it's kind of the try and buy and make sure that you're working with a platform that one can deliver like and execute on this, right? So all of us build software systems, we build solutions. So make sure one that you get that car per se on the road, right? So it's a try and buy. It's a pilot. Get that pilot running. So whether it's with KredosAi or some of our biggest competitors, make sure you're doing a try and buy and make sure you're using that. Don't just figure out how to use the software. How is it working with the people that are in the company? Do they understand your problems? Do they care about your problems? Are they supporting you? Are they experimenting with you? Are they embracing your challenges as opportunities? And then in the end, one of the most important parts of our phases and our pilots is where are the results, right? I don't want you to take my word for it because that's not what this is about. It's about results. So I think when you get into competitive environments with KredosAi and some of our competitors, it's again, get in a pilot, give it a test drive, just like we want our the dealers want the borrowers to do and the buyers to do, and make sure that you're truly getting better outcomes after testing out systems like Kredos and some of our competitors.
Sounds
That
great.
was amazing.
That was fast, right?
It was. That was a lot of information, Scott, but I seriously learned a ton and found it incredibly interesting. So thank you to Marguerite and Scott. We have one question in the chat right now, but if there are more, please go ahead and put them in. I'm going to start with the first question here. How do you avoid the over messaging that leads to customers opting out of this type of messaging?
Yeah, that's a great custom, William. So, William, I think the one thing is our system will really does have some guardrails on it where that quote unquote should not happen, right? We have quite a bit of signals detection and systems and processes to understand what we're sending, when we're sending it. And again, the whole idea that what we do, right time, the right person, the right channel. So I think that over messaging would probably increase the problem that we're talking about, not decrease the problem. So we have controls and guardrails in our solution to prevent that. But there are times when maybe increased messaging can work. So the other thing I would say is also the key parts of the message is the tone of the message is also important. So depending on where you are in the stage, if you're early, it's a softer tone. So that's really important. And then, as you're getting later in the cycle, it gets a little bit more firm. But hopefully that answers your question, William. Good question.
And can I throw in a question? Somebody asked if they can meet up with Scott next week, and I know his answer, and I want to be answering his answer. Where are you going to be next week, Scott?
I'm going to be in upstate New York.
Oh, I think you were going to be next week in Barcelona.
No, that's mobile. So we're going to be in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona on February, March 2nd through March 6th, which is really exciting. But hey, I'm going to be in upstate New York and available for any conversations about KredosAi or anything about this presentation.
Okay, but not in Las Vegas next week.
No.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I thought it was going to give you a little pull there. I wanted to be in Barcelona.
Well, yeah, that's a nice place to be. There's a really good question in here. If I could, is KredosAi compliant? And I would say absolutely. We would not be successful if we were not compliant. So we are SOC 2 compliant, and we are never sharing PII data. So I would say absolutely we are compliant, 100%.
Wonderful. Thank you. I actually have one, if you don't mind, Scott. If a lender wanted to take one step in the next 90 days to improve outcomes, where would you recommend them starting? I get this question, and I know it could be on someone else's mind if it's on mine. So
Right. I mean, I think the honestly, like, proactivity, just because I was just thinking about it, is probably the first thing on my mindset is these early reminders. I'm not sure if anybody actually does early reminders, but I live by my calendar reminders. And if I did not have an early calendar reminder, I would not come to any events that I am scheduled for. So I believe there's a lot of behaviors that are centered around that. And I think that most lenders and vendors, if you are starting to be proactive with the simplest, lowest hanging fruit, how can we get some early payment reminders going? That's probably the first thing that I would do, so that again, you're figuring out about the problem. You're getting ahead of it, not sending these reminders after there's a problem. So that's one thing. But again, every business is a little different. So I would definitely say that would be the first thing I would do, because some people just might forget the payment. To be honest with you, we're
right,
very busy, and there's a lot of digital fatigue and noise.
right. Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
going to open it up to any other questions. You can take yourself off of mute and feel free to blurt one out or throw it into the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to do some house cleaning here. Again, this has been recorded. It will be sent out to all registrations in the next 24 to 48 business hours. If you need Scott's contact information, Scott, do you have a slide with your information on it, or should I send that out?
It is really small on the bottom of the slide. So this was a how can you squint and see my name contest. Apparently, I should have made this bigger, but I put it in the chat. It is scott@kredosai.com. If you don't mind sending it, Diane, that would be fantastic. But
Okay.
it's on the back of the last slide on the bottom. So I should have done a better job at increasing the size there. Sorry about that.
It
All
looks like you
right.
have
You've
two additional questions, though, if you want to try to answer those real quickly.
So have
Yep,
you
let's.
tried, yeah, there's a good one in there. So have you tried using door knock services in the early delinquency stage as friendly reminders for customers that do not answer the phone? So are we talking physical door knocking or nudging in other ways? Okay, so physical door knocking. We don't do that. So I'm assuming that some lenders may have done that. To me, that probably in this day and age sounds not as scalable because we don't know when people are at home and they're to answer that, to do the door knocking. So I think most research would show, and if you can search Google, that people's phones don't get too far away from them during the day 24/7. So we believe strongly and are passionate about leveraging intelligent messaging to mobile devices.
Thank you, Scott. We also have another question. So Credos AI, just for texting and payments, correct?
I would say we started in intelligent messaging for payment, 100%. We are adapting like every business. We're relatively new and young, so we're growing and we are growing into other areas that we talked about today to improve the customer experience and engagement. So we started in payments. We do text messaging, but obviously you can do email. We do emails. We support email as well. And I think you'll see us over time growing into other spaces. You're going to see us leverage cool tools like agentic AI in the very near future in different ways. So yes is the short answer, but that's not the end of the story.
Oh,
Under Perfect. And we have a phenomenal comment in chat from Jody Lambert at Anderson Brothers Bank. They are testing with very positive results so far.
that's an endorsement, that's for sure. All
That
right.
is. All
Thank you so
right.
much for saying that, Jody. We appreciate that, and we're looking forward to working with you further.
Well, Scott, Marguerite, thank you again. I would like to mention that we are excited here at NAF to announce that we are celebrating our 30th year anniversary at our conference this June in at the Omni Las Colinas in Irving, Texas. Registration opens next Tuesday or February 2nd. I think that's next Tuesday. We do have early bird rates available. So if you have never been, I think it's an awesome conference. I know I'm a little partial, but it really is. Please make sure you register to get that early bird registration rate. We also have two other signature events, our executive exchange, which is in September of this year, and our compliance workshop for you compliance professionals here. That is in October in Irving, Texas. So with that, Scott, Marguerite, thank you again so very, very much. Appreciate your time. Everybody, thank you for attending. Diane Marino at nafassociation.com. You can reach me at any time with any questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks.